If your business files are everywhere, random downloads, 17 versions of the same doc, a desktop that looks like a cry for help, this is for you. I'm showing you exactly how I would set up a digital filing system from scratch, even if you're busy, allergic to organization, or just over it. Let's dive right in. When I started my business back in 2016, I built this crazy, massive, color-coded filing system. It looked gorgeous for about 5 minutes, but I never used it. What actually ended up working was building a system so simple that even lazy me couldn't mess it up. And now 9 years later, that same approach is still how I organize everything. And now I'm going to tell you a secret, and that is that you don't need 100 folders. You really just need 3 main buckets to keep everything where it belongs. Once you understand those 3 buckets, you can scale it up, and I will get into that in a little bit later. But you don't have to start out complicated. If you're feeling overwhelmed right now, start with 3. Now, I'm sure you're dying to know, what are the 3 buckets? And really, you can name these whatever you want. But if you're just starting out, you have no idea what you want to do, I would recommend starting with an active folder, an archive folder, and an assets folder. And we're going to go into what goes into each of these folders. Your active folder is going to hold everything that you are currently working on right now. Current projects, client work, launches, everything that you are working on now that has a due date that is soon or whatever is going to go in your active folder. And pro tip about the active folder is to only keep what you're working on actively in this current quarter in that folder. That's way it stays neat, because eventually all projects are no longer active and you've got to put them somewhere. And even if it's something that you do need every so often, you can always search for it and find it, or better yet, have a place for it that you know that's where that's going to live. For this, I'm thinking about things like SOPs or just other documentation about your business. Like, that may not need to, it's always going to be active, right? You're always going to be using that or referencing it, but not necessarily every quarter. So it doesn't really need to stay in your active folder where you're seeing it every time you go in there to get a project info. You just want to have that filed away somewhere where you can find it when you do need it. Your assets folder is going to hold templates, any brand files like logos or docs with color or brand sheets, anything like that, any other resources that you reuse. A lot of this stuff gets saved like in Canva, and you may not need to download it every single time you go to make a new graphic, but it's always a good idea to have that stuff in one spot so that if you ever needed to share it with a designer or somebody else is going to be working on something, maybe a VA you bring on, you'll have it in one spot, you know where everything is, and you can just share that folder with them and they have access to everything, all of your current files, hex codes for colors, like brand images, all of that stuff is in one place for them. This also goes for templates too, like if they're going to be sending out emails and you have email templates that you have saved that you want to use primarily when you're sending things out or responding to client emails. Having all of that stuff in your assets folder is going to be a huge benefit when you start handing those tasks off to a team member. And if you choose not to hand tasks off to a team member, then you're going to be so happy that you know exactly where to find everything. And a little piece of advice about naming your files. If you start your most important files or folders with a 00 and an underscore, you'll make sure that they always sit at the top of your list so that you can find those more easily when you go in to look for them. You can also star them if you're using Google Drive and that sort of thing, but if you just want to be able to go to that folder and have those files that you use the most at the top, I would name them with something like that. And then your third folder is going to be called Archive. Everything else goes in this folder where it is out of sight, but it's still searchable if you do need to find something that's in that folder again later on. This is going to be for past client projects, past launch information, content that's already been posted, all of these things. You might want to go back and revisit them at some point. Keep it organized when you put it in this folder, but you want it outside of your main folders that you're using all the time, which would be your active folder, things you're currently working on right now, and your assets folder, which has your brand files and templates and things like that that you use on a regular basis. Another little bonus tip I have for you here is inside your archive folder, I recommend putting a doc in called README. I would call it underscore README, that outlines the way that you've named or organized everything inside of this archives folder. Put like a quick description of your naming convention and then just like a brief summary of what's in there, maybe the dates, like any projects older than July of 2025 are going to be in the archives folder, and anything that is from July to October or whatever of 2025 or August to October, then that will be in the actives folder. Something like that, so that if you can't quite find what you're looking for, you'll have an idea of where it's supposed to be. This also helps too if something accidentally gets filed in the wrong place, you'll have an idea of maybe either where it landed or where it was supposed to go when you filed it the first time. Because it happens. Sometimes drag and drop doesn't drag and drop the way it's supposed to, right? Now, this is where people usually ask me, what about social media, taxes, SOPs, other documentation, things I just need to keep, past launch information. We've talked about some of this already, but really though, all of that information is going to live inside of these 3 buckets. I've expanded this into a 9-folder layout. It is a little bit more with more clients because you would want a separate folder for each client, but I'm counting my client work folder as 1. Inside of that would be each individual client, but that's going to vary based on how many people you're working with at a time. So I would just say client work is 1 folder. And once you get the hang of this, a little more structure makes things work a little bit easier. But if you're just starting out, I don't want you to get overwhelmed with trying to think of, oh my gosh, what are the 9 folders that I need and how do I split everything up into them? Like, just start with the 3 and then branch it out as you are ready to do that. When you start realizing, oh, I need a separate folder for my client work, the assets or the active folder isn't enough, then inside of the active folder, create your client work folder and then start putting now you've cleaned up your active folder, but everything is still in there where you're working on it. So you just start with the 3 and you build it out as you grow. Now I want to talk to you about the find it in 30 seconds rule. Because if you watch any of my other videos about organization, digital file organization, you'll know that we waste a lot of time sometimes looking for files that aren't where they are supposed to be. So my general rule for this is that if I can't find it within 30 seconds, the system is broken and it needs to be looked at. So here are a few things I've done to help me find things easier if they're not in one of those 3 content bucket folders where I can just easily find it. For the most part, they are. But the more clients you work with, the more content you create, like the more stuff is just going to be in there. And sometimes it can still be a little bit difficult to pinpoint that one specific thing that you were looking for, especially if it's older. Let's say you're working with a client and you've been working with them for years and they want to go back to a launch that happened 3 years ago and find the emails from that launch and use them again. It can be a little bit tricky to find that unless you've got everything named on point. So I want you to stop naming your folders and your files based on feeling and start naming them based on action or category. What I mean by this is stop naming it new email sequence 2023, because what does that mean? What is it a sequence for? How long is it going to be considered new? 2023 was a long year. Like, what part of 2023 was it made in? That sequence title doesn't tell us anything. So I want you to start using prefixes for your folder and file names along with the category. So for example, 01 underscore content underscore email, and then maybe the date would tell you exactly what that document is. It's an email and when it was sent out. You could even, if it was for a launch, you could even put launch in there somewhere, like email launch and then the date, just something like that in the title so that you know exactly what's in there without having to click through a bunch of documents. I know in the past we've been kind of bad about naming documents for a launch, but it would just be like 2023 launch emails. Okay, but is that for the launch of this product or the launch of this product or just fall launch? And sure, 2023 fall is fairly specific, but again, which document or which product are we launching? Which group of emails are these? Are these the actual live launch emails? Are these the build-up emails? Are these the pre-sale emails? Like which, what is going on? So you definitely want to make sure that you have a naming convention, and putting numbers in the beginning obviously are going to help sort it in a specific order inside of your Google Drive so that you will know exactly where to find that. And the more specific you can be in your name, like strategy or content, email, launch, like the name of your launch or the launch year, keeping in line with the find it in 30 seconds rule. I also love that you can star folders inside of Google Drive. So if it's something that you visit every single day or every single week, you can star it and know exactly where it's going to be without, again, having to filter through your whole system. Now your system's going to be very simple and clean now, right? So that wouldn't be the end of the world. But if it's something that you know you're going to need really regularly, I would star it so that you can just click on the start and it's right there. Now let's talk about keeping this lazy proof, because you and I both know you're not going to file everything the second that you're done with it. So let's build in a little buffer. Create one folder, call it inbox, call it crap I need to file, call it whatever you want. And then at least once a week, set a 10-minute timer to go through that folder and file away everything into your 3 buckets. I just did this yesterday with my desktop, and I cannot tell you how much better I felt as soon as like all of that stuff was cleared off. Now there's still some things living on my desktop because I'm working on them, right? Like the next video that I need to edit, like the raw footage is still sitting on my desktop because that's next on my list to do, is edit that. And once I'm done editing it, then that will go get filed away. So it's okay to have things kind of living in one spot while you're using them or until you're done with them. But when you're done, make sure that they get filed away where they need to go, because if you start cluttering up your desktop, trust me, things get overwhelming, and then it's like, why bother, right? Now, if you want to skip the trial and error part, I put this exact system inside of Chaos to Cozy. Right here, you'll see that it has just all of the folders that I recommend having here. A couple more hiding behind me. There we go, templates and assets and testimonials. Now, this is the 9-folder system that I recommend you have, and these folders are going to file away into the 3 buckets that we just talked about. So, for example, SOPs would live in the assets folder here. Admin would also probably live in assets. Clients could live in your active folder. Finances and marketing would be probably in active, maybe in assets, depends on how that works better for your brain. Offers would probably be in assets, and then templates and assets could be in assets, right? And then testimonials also would be in assets. So a lot of that stuff is going to be filed away in your assets folder because it's things that you're going to need to keep coming back to, but you don't necessarily need every single day. And then your client work and any other launches or projects and things like that are going to be in your active folder, which you can see right here. And then archive is going to be anything that you're done with. So clients you're not working with anymore, launches that are past due, or not past due, but past over, and like content that you've already posted and that kind of thing. You want to keep all of that information, but you don't need to see it all the time. So put it away in your archives folder, and it's always going to be searchable for you if you decide that you want to revisit it for whatever reason. You definitely don't need to start with all 9 of these folders, but if you are interested in having all of this set up for you, along with the 10 files that you need to create for your business to get you started with having some of this stuff already documented, then I'll put a link to Chaos to Cozy down in the description and in the pinned comment, so you can just check it out if you feel like that's something that seems helpful for you. The magic isn't about being perfectly organized. It's about making your system work for you. So whether you create your system from scratch or you start with the Chaos to Cozy system, make it work for you. Name the folders something that's going to work for your brain. Okay, if templates and assets is boring and you want to call it something else that you know are going to know what it is, then call it that. Okay, just name it something that's going to work for you. But I want you to keep in mind when you're doing that, because naming it seems like such a simple, like straightforward thing, but it's almost like the names of your folders and files need to be a little bit boring, just so that when you go to search for something, you know exactly what you need to type in to find it. I could name my brand assets rainbows and unicorns, but if I can't remember that that's what that is, then I'm not going to remember to search for rainbows and unicorns when I'm looking for that file in my Google Drive. Or even more so, if I were to hire somebody to work with me and they were in Google Drive looking for it, they're not going to have any idea that rainbows and unicorns is my brand asset, you know, colors and things. So they will never find it. So while I do think that it's fine to have fun with your naming conventions to a point, I also think that they need to be somewhat normal and boring so that they can be searched. And when you can find anything in your whole file system within 30 seconds, your business moves faster, it feels calmer, and you stop wasting brain power on where did I put that thing? I know I left it right here. I know I put it in this folder, but it was never put in the folder. Got lost into the ether of your desktop or Google Drive somewhere, and it has a funky name, so when you search for it, it doesn't pop up. Been there. Not fun. So whether you're just starting your business or you've been around for a little bit and you're just looking for a little more organization and a little less chaos, let's start there. And if you have been in your business for a little while and you've got a bunch of files, just gather up all those files. This is what I would do if you're kind of starting from chaos. Take all of those files that you know are business files that you want to have organized, put them in one folder that says to organize or something along those lines. And shit to deal with, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And spend the 10 minutes every week going through those files and sorting them out. You don't have to do it all at once, just do it a little bit at a time. And then eventually you will have everything organized the way that we just talked about today with the 3 buckets, and then however granular you want to get from there. 9's working for me right now, so that's kind of what I suggest, because I think if you get too granular, then you start getting to, well, this file could go in this folder or this folder, so where do I put it? But if you have it just kind of like a little bit bigger chunks, then you'll find a home for everything. Okay, I hope you found that helpful. If you are looking for more support with the digital organizing and that sort of thing, I'm going to link you over here to this playlist because I have a few more videos on this topic that I think you might enjoy. And why don't you go ahead and just drop in the comments what you're struggling with the most when it comes to keeping your business organized so that we can have a little chat about it. And I will see you next time. Bye.